all the way to the COP conference from Beijing?
Well, thank you. If you allow me, let me start by saying how emotional, how thankful, how humbled, how privileged I feel today being here with all of you and receiving this extraordinary award from an extraordinary woman that I admire so much. Not only me, but so many people around the world. And thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Milan, also for these very generous ways of presenting myself and the work that I have done. It is really, really moving for me. Well, let's go to Beijing, 1995. Beijing was a change, in my view, Beijing was a change in human history. I think we really need to see it in this bigger dimension. Sometimes we speak about, yes, it was a change regarding women's issues. No, it was a change in human history. For me personally, it changed me professionally and personally. It was the first time that I was there sitting and listening to these women coming from so many different parts of the world and talking about challenges they were facing that I had no idea they existed. And I went to school, I was educated, so I was just, it was an eye-opener. It was also the first time that I saw Secretary Clinton in action. And it was just amazing. As a young diplomat, it made me understand clearly how important it is that in addition to the technical negotiations, you have political leadership. And that takes a lot of courage. We heard from Secretary Clinton, she was immediately facing pushback, I imagine here and elsewhere as well. But she decided to stand for that agenda. And that is something that is very frequently missing in international affairs in order to address global issues. Now, let me go to climate change. Climate change, as Melen, as you said, was not specifically discussed in Beijing. We were not really talking so much about climate change, although I have to say scientists already knew about this. But we did address the issue of environmental protection at Beijing. What is the situation? Climate change is today the biggest threat to humanity. And it affects women disproportionately. Climate change is a threat multiplier. So if we think about vulnerable women, just imagine how this affects them. Hillary mentioned some of the ways that women are affected in her wonderful remarks. So it would be the logical question to make sure that women are also taken into account in the solutions for addressing climate change. But that is not the case currently. So imagine, can we think that we can get a solution for a global problem if we are not fully taking into account half of the population of the world, their needs, their expectations, their specific realities? So unfortunately, we're still very far. So we just had, as Melen was mentioning, COP26 in Glasgow. Over 30,000 participants. It's true, in many of the rooms, you could see quite a number of women. But how many women were in decision-making positions? That is another story. Let me tell you an anecdote. The first day of the conference, we had the presence of over 120 heads of state and government. They went to a reception in the evening. The family picture was taken. Some of you may have seen that picture. It was social media. Well, we could only see maybe 4 or 5 women there in that picture, and one of them was me. I'm not a head of state or government, but I was there. So it just, to me, it was really striking. It's like the picture of power in the 21st century. That is not acceptable. We need to react. Yes, a lot has changed since Beijing 1995, but we're still very far from ensuring that women have the place that belongs to them in society, in all walks of life, and particularly in power. So when I think about all of this situation, it was very disappointing to see all those heads of state and government and so few women. You may ask me, well, but why do you keep on going? And I think it's for those of us who are privileged to have the opportunity to make a contribution in addressing such an important issue for humanity, it's an ethical issue. It's just, we cannot give up for our own sake, for the sake of our families, for the sake of the whole of society. And if you were there at Glasgow conference listening to the people coming from the islands and how for them, the Prime Minister of Barbados, for example, saying, you know, for many of you here, 1.5 or 2 are just numbers. For us, 2 is a death sentence. So it is really all these inspiring leaders and women especially that I have met throughout my career. Here we have 2 of them, and then we have new friends and leaders that really inspire me to go on. Thank you very much for this award. It will become an additional inspiration for me to keep going.
So Marina, we know that Beijing also influenced you, and it was the first time that violence against women was put on the international agenda and chiseled into international law. It was a crime, not just a family matter. So how did it influence you? And when you think about it, it is so pervasive today. COVID has made it that much worse. What interventions work? What more